The Toronto Maple Leafs have made more moves as ahead of their back-to-back. They have made some very interesting decisions. We're going to break that down in this episode, as well as discuss some more surprising injury updates, specifically regarding Anthony Stolarz, as well as a couple others. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. If you're a part of that 71% who aren't subscribed, we're trying to hit our goal of 15,000 subscribers. So if you're enjoying the daily content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Now, Darius, there's a lot to go over today. They, of course, play tonight. They also play tomorrow. Red Wings tonight, Buffalo Sabres tomorrow, and in all likelihood, which we'll kind of show you here, there's going to be a different goalie in net tomorrow night, but there's a lot of updates to go over today, so let's just start with Bobby McMann. So Bobby McMann is back and will be in the lineup tonight. We will go over the projected lineups for tonight's game. Anthony Stolarz traveled with the Leafs to Detroit for some extra works, but won't play today or tomorrow. So a couple of different things going on here, and of course, I just gave you a little sneak peek at Nikita Gorbenkin there. But I want to start with this. So Bobby McMann is back. We'll dive into the lines here in a minute. But Anthony Stolarz is looking good as well. He's not going to play tonight or tomorrow, which means we'll see, in all likelihood, Dennis Hildeby tomorrow night against the Buffalo Sabres. But he's back on the ice today doing some extra work. So all things look good on that front. But he's not going to be playing tonight or tomorrow.
No, he won't be playing this weekend, but it looks like he will make a return early next week, which I think is a really good sign. And they got really good results back from whatever testing they were doing. So I think that's a really good sign for the Leafs and obviously Leaf fans, because Stolarz has been fantastic so far this year. But, a major storyline coming out of this, and I'll get to McMahon in a second, is Dennis Hildeby is probably playing tomorrow night. Now, the Buffalo Sabres, this is an interesting game, right? The Buffalo Sabres are struggling, and the Leafs notoriously, in past seasons, kind of played down to their opponents sometimes. And this year, I haven't really seen that too much, against Chicago and a couple other teams like, excuse me, they're starting to push the pace a little bit more. And I think Berube is, kicking them out of that habit a little bit. So I think that's a good sign. I think that they should, as a team, steamroll the Buffalo Sabres tomorrow, even if it's the second half of a back-to-back. But Dennis Hildeby in net, I think it's very interesting. A lot of people were speculating, could Axiomov be called up? I think he's playing fantastic with the Marlies. Leave him down there to continue to do his thing. Matt Murray's dealing with an injury down there as well. So Dennis Hildeby, call him up. He has pro experience. I think it makes all the sense in the world. And in terms of Bobby McMann, I think he just adds more depth to the lineup. He lengthens the lineup. And we need more out of him, I think, this season, but it's good that he's back, and I'm excited to see him get back on track.
We saw him on the first line there for a while before he went out with his injury. And Ryan Reeves is likely the odd man out here for Bobby McMann tonight, which Ryan Reeves has been playing okay. He's been, of course, since he's returned from his suspension, been playing fine hockey. But regarding Stolarz, and we'll kind of touch back on McMann in a minute once we go to the lines, but he did come out, but he will not go on the ice. We're going to give him another day. So he wasn't necessarily skating publicly with practice, but he is putting in some extra work. And I think he's going to be fine. I'm sure that he'll probably start sometime late next week. But again, like I've been mentioning, we've heard day to day, we've heard all of these things so many times that I tend to err on the side of caution when it comes to projecting and attempting to predict when these guys are going to come back again. Jake McCabe, he was supposed to not miss any games. He ended up missing over a week. You have a ton of different, even Austin Matthews, injury wasn't supposed to be anything good. You see him travel out of the country. So there's a lot of different things here. So ultimately, it's going to be interesting. But I also wanted to touch on this. So Bobby McMann was activated from the IR, like we mentioned. Nikita Gorbenkin has been assigned to the Toronto Marlies. Now, he was sent down, and then he was called back up, didn't play, and then was sent back down again. I saw a couple comments asking what's happening with Nikita Gorbenkin. I think they just called him up to get him continually to get him acclimated to the NHL level. Of course, he's now playing with the Marlies. He's coming from the a different league, obviously not in the United States. So just getting him to continue to get acclimated to the NHL and the AHL for that matter. Do you have any thoughts on this and what you saw from him in his brief stint in the NHL? I like what I saw. He looked good at times. I still think he needs some get some work done down there though in the AHL level, and maybe we'll see him next year as a regular or the year after.
Yeah, I think with him, it's interesting. When you look at a guy like Alex Nylander, he brings one thing to the table. But I feel like Gurbankin, while being a scorer in the KHL last year, he came into the Leafs and he can play on the fourth line. He can play on your second line. Maybe not yet. He probably needs a little bit more conditioning with the Marlies and obviously to learn the North American game a little bit more. But he can play all throughout the lineup. So I think going forward, he's going to be a really good player for the Leafs. And even this year, like if he needs to fill in on the fourth line when there's injuries, we've seen him be able to do that. He can bring more to the table, like the physicality and all that stuff, right? right? We saw him fight in the preseason as well. So I really like this player, and I think going forward, he's going to be a good piece for the Leafs. And him going up and down, I think it's just because, they obviously him going back down now is because they needed to activate Bobby McMahon off the IR, but him coming up was probably just to get him an NHL salary, probably just paper transaction, stuff like that. So they have more salary at the end of the year to use at the trade deadline. So I don't think there's much to it, him kind of being yo-yoed up and down right now. But I think that if they continue to stay healthy, then he will be with the Marlies. And I think that's where he should be for now, at least, because, get your confidence up. He was playing top line minutes. He was playing with Alex Nylander as well. They were playing really well. So just continue to do your thing down there. But I think he's going to be a really big piece of this team probably next year, year after that. I really like this player. So, you know what? I'm sure we'll see him again because of the injuries. But one thing to note too, David Kampf is nearing a return. And when that happens, they're going to have to make another move. And that probably will be a trade.
Yeah, and Nick Robertson's another guy. And let's dive into the lines here for tonight. Nick Robertson is out once again, so I think his time in Toronto, once David Kampf returns, maybe they're setting up a trade right now regarding, again, David Kampf's going to have to come back. You're looking at Nyes, Matthews, Marner. So Matthews and Marner, unfortunately, are paired again. I'm not a huge fan of that. They haven't been playing too great, at least specifically that pairing. Marner kind of defers to Matthews too much when Matthews is on the same line, but I'll digress for now. Pacioretty, Tavares, and William Nylander, McMahon, Minton, Domi. Again, an interesting third line there with Holmberg, Connor Dewar, and Steven Lorenz. So, interesting lines. We'll get into the blue lines as well here. You have Ryan Reeves out practicing as the 8th defenseman. Benoit Timmins, McCabe, Tanev, Riley, OEL. So Riley and OEL are back together at the top there. So that's interesting. It's Robertson out again. Like, it seems like his time in Toronto is ticking. It seems like his time is up. And like you mentioned, once David Kampf comes back, they're really starting to get healthy now. They're almost getting close to being fully healthy. Of course, a few other, Stolars and Kampf, but it's interesting lines here. And you see Hildeby at the bottom there. Joseph Wall starts tonight.
There's a couple of things I'm interested in this lineup. And again, this is from practice yesterday. They didn't have line rushes today, so it could look a little bit different, but I'm thinking that it's probably going to look something like this. The first line, again, we've talked about Matthews and Marner playing together. I don't necessarily agree with it, but the fact that the second line, when they've been together, these three guys, throughout this season, they have clicked. That is a good line. You can't break that line up. So I do agree with that, I guess, for that reason. But I'm interested to see what that third line does tonight because Minton has a little bit of help now. Domi, he needs to get going. McMahon coming back, he has something to prove. So I'm really interested to see if there's any substance out of that third line tonight. So that's the one thing I'm going to look for. The fourth line is interesting too. David Kampf is nearing a return. Dewar, they're giving him a lot of opportunities to play center on that fourth line. And there's a mix of speed and physicality on that fourth line. So I want to see what they give and if Dewar can kind of, take over that fourth line center spot because maybe they're getting ready for life without David Kampf too, right? They're going to have to make a difficult decision coming up here. So I don't know exactly who it's going to be, but they're going to have to move somebody out, I think. And the defense pairings, they've been great. Wouldn't change anything about it. Love McCabe and Tanev. They've been fantastic together. So, missing McCabe for the last 2 weeks or whatever it was to this point, having him back is fantastic.
Yeah, and maybe there's a world where they pair Kampf, Dewar, and Steven Lorenz, and Pontus Holmberg's the odd one out. There's a world where a bunch of these things happen.
That's
like
true.
they could get interesting with it. I don't think Pontus has played particularly well, so it's going to be interesting to see. But David Kampf and Connor Dewar, not the exact same players, but they have some similar usage and skill sets for what Craig Berube is wanting that fourth line to bring out to the team. So it's going to be interesting. Let us know down below what your thoughts are on all of this. A big game tonight against the Detroit Red Wings. Hopefully they can take care of business. We'll keep you up to date with all of this news, so make sure to hit the subscribe button. See you later.